Good evening, welcome to another Hot Topic, where we debate the issues of the day affecting the people of East Yorkshire and Northern Lincolnshire. This week we take a peek across the border of that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns. We're talking about funerals. Councillors have recently caused a stir by claiming funeral directors in North East Lincolnshire were operating a cartel. This has been strenuously denied by the funeral directors. This, of course, opens up a much wider debate. Are funerals a costly affair? Are they too costly? Should the council run their own funeral businesses? To discuss this, I'm joined by my guests tonight, and they are Jill Hewson, the Director of Serenity Memorials based in Cleethorpes. She has argued that a potential council funeral service could penalise local businesses and maybe put them out of business. She's also keen to rebut any claims made by the council's recent cartel allegations. And Labour councillor Ray Sutton is the councillor for the Freshney Ward place in North East Lincolnshire, and he claims that funeral firms hold a captive market. Welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Riches. Before we start the debate, let's take a look at what the people of Grimsby think about this very emotive subject.
They are expensive, these independent people, but with people who can't afford it, if the council can help out somewhere around the line, then why not? Yeah, it could do us good.
Do you think funerals are too expensive?
Yes, definitely, 100%, yeah, definitely. I mean, especially, everything that involves, yeah, definitely.
Do you think the council should run a funeral service?
Yes and no.
Why is that?
Yes, for the people that can't afford to serve a funeral, because funerals are expensive. Not everybody's got 3 or 4 grand for like a coffin, let alone anything else. And no, because you shouldn't really have to rely on the council to provide you for a funeral.
I think they should, because sometimes when people die, they haven't got families to pay for a funeral or anything like that, so they could just have a terrible funeral, and it's not a good place to go.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Maybe subsidise for people that can't really afford it, but maybe.
Do you think funerals are too expensive?
Well, they are if you can't afford them, definitely. I mean, you've got to make sure that you save up, and if you can't afford to save up, then you just end up having a not very nice time because you end up in a pauper's grave. So I think there should be some sort of scheme where people could pay so much a week, and they'd know that they would get a decent burial or a decent cremation.
Do you think the council should run a funeral service?
No.
Do you think funerals are too expensive?
I don't know, because I've paid for mine.
So there we are, some mixed views from local people. Jill, first of all, did I pronounce your surname correctly?
You did.
Thank you very much, I was worried. How much does a fairly run-of-the-mill common or garden funeral cost?
You can say, including disbursements, which is totally out of the funeral director's control, you can start looking at about £3,500.
£3,500. That's the simplest, plainest funeral one can imagine?
Including the disbursements,
Okay.
so yes.
What is a disbursement?
Disbursements are things like the crematorium fees, burial, purchase of a grave, a minister, flowers, a notice in the local paper, things like that. Those are disbursements.
If you don't have a crematorium, a grave, or a clergyman of some sort, it's not really a funeral, is it?
Not really.
What's left without all that?
There isn't really anything left, unless the family, of course, want to say a few words themselves at a graveside.
So what's the absolute simplest cost? If you just simply, you're not a religious family, and you don't require any sort of ceremony or ritual or anything like that, you just need to dispose of a body, as it were, in a legal way.
You still, unfortunately, have to have either a cremation or a burial.
And
so if you have a burial, you have to purchase a grave, and that's £930 to bury the person. The interment fee is £715 for a single plot. So you've, with the funeral director's fees on there, without having anything else, you're then probably looking, I would say, 3,100.
And for a cremation?
You'd then be probably looking...
But several thousand.
I was going to say, yes, it's probably about 900 less, so about 2.5 you could do your cheapest.
Ray, Could the council offer a cheaper service than that?
I think we're not at that stage. I mean, I've done a lot of research for this interview, and it's certainly true that at least one independent local funeral service offers an eco-friendly basic funeral. I think they probably call it a fairer funeral at the sort of cost that you're outlining, 2,300, and so that tallies, I think, with what you're saying. And I mean, I'm very interested in the way these costs are divided up, and I really first should say I really welcome the opportunity to be discussing this subject, because part of the problem is that people don't know, and none of us likes to think about these things until the moment we need them. Even if we save up on a plan, we don't think about them, and so we're caught in a difficult situation very often where, you know, something has happened and we're
a bit shy about
we
death,
are.
aren't we?
So the awareness raising is I welcome it.
I was
welcome
going to say
the
it's, yeah.
but I mean, going back to the costs, I mean, it sounds as though we're saying the same thing. But I think all the reports, there have been a lot of reports, I've been amazed from lots of people. I think Royal Insurance produced a regular report, and Sun Life Direct produced an annual report. But the breakdown is very often between what they call the basic funeral and then what they call the send-off. And I think you know, you mentioned the flowers in one moment, and one or two, what you might call the things that are not absolutely necessary and the things that are absolutely necessary. I think we're now talking the same language, because we're talking about this 2,300 as being the things that you have to have.
In one way or another, then, the heirs, the survivors of anybody who dies, which is all of us eventually, are going to have to pay up in order to meet the requirements of the law about a minimum of about £2,500. What happens if you don't? What happens if you just leave Granny on the dining room table? I mean, there's presumably a regulation that that's not possible.
Correct. Oh.
Jill, you get
I was going to say there are the social fund, families who really, if they're on benefits, they can actually claim through with the social fund. They will give them help to do that. A lot of families don't just, they take out funeral plans, so they are actually thinking. We found that pre-planning for the services, a lot more people are doing it nowadays than they did 30, 40 years ago. So there are different ways and means. If someone dies in a hospital, the hospital will actually pay for a private simple service for families. So there are different things, but funeral directors nowadays, we do understand that families haven't always got a lot of spare money, because some families plan, some families don't. So we're always trying to look to help families choose a service which is affordable to themselves.
Part of that cost, it seems, is taken by the council. Certainly with cremations, then part of that expense is because what the council already provides is quite expensive.
I think it's fair to say that all councils generally are offering a cremation burial service, and that is part of the work of local government, or has been. And a lot of the controversy here has arisen because our council in North East Lincolnshire is part of a Cabinet Office initiated scheme called Developing Differently, which is for 10 local authorities to look at one particular area that might be delivered in a new way. And that's ended up being narrowed down in North East Lincolnshire, and it's not been done deliberately or in an ad hoc way. It's been done by consultants looking at lots of things the council does, and in the end this has been seen as one thing in an innovative way that might be looked at, but it is not necessarily true that that is about delivering funerals.
Well, Ray, can I just be very specific about this? How much does it cost in terms of fuel and labour to burn an average-sized man?
I don't think many of us would be able to answer that question. I certainly cannot. I'm not privy to that kind of information.
It was a very horribly macabre question in its own way, wasn't it, as well? But it is going to cost something in council resources. It's not a cheap activity, presumably.
No, I don't think anybody in the country, and I think we have to remember these are national issues, they're not just local to North East Lincolnshire, is questioning the rates that are charged by crematoria for the services they offer. I'm not aware of any huge questioning of that, of profit or claims of profiteering. I'm not aware of it.
I do just want to talk about some of the options that are open to people, maybe a little bit later. We're a coastal town. Can we just have burials at sea? I don't see people dropping people off the end of Cleethorpes Pier.
No, you can't have full burials off of Cleethorpes, but you can go down to the Needles.
On the Isle of Wight?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes, we still go down there and have full burials at sea there.
Right. We'll have to take a short break there. We'll continue to talk about this topic in a moment. Welcome back to Hot Topic. Still with me in the studio, Jill Hutterson of Serenity Memorials and Councillor Ray Sutton. Councillor Ray Sutton. There's a difference in government policy here concerning welfare funerals. There's a Department of Work and Pensions grant. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
The very basic end of things, somebody can't afford a funeral at all. They can't afford to get anybody to move a body, and the body remains in the mortuary. And ultimately, after a long period of time, they have to apply to the council to actually carry out a welfare funeral. The council has a contract with a local firm, which I won't mention here, to do that work, and it's paid for by the state. That exists in every local authority in the country. And then you have people who get into the process of trying to organise a funeral and really have very few resources. Anybody can apply for a Department of Work and Pensions grant, but the timing is such that that money comes in after the event, and so the bill has been paid and you're immediately in debt even though you have got very few resources. And that can happen. And for instance, if somebody has been cared for by somebody with learning disabilities and they die, effectively the person with learning disabilities has very few resources sometimes. It may not be the case, but it may be, and they're left in a position whereby they have to make an application late in the day. They may be left with an enormous debt because they didn't know what options were available. And one of the problems we have here is that people don't know the options. They don't want to go researching websites to look at different compositions of bills at this stage in their sad lives, and so they end up saying yes almost to anything. They don't know whether the person they're dealing with offers a fair funeral, and in fact there are people nationally now who are trying to say every funeral director should sign up to the fair funeral deal, and there is an aspiration, regardless of councils, to actually try and bring down the basic funeral cost, without flowers, without all the extras like gubbins, horses, boats, as you said earlier, and burials at sea, to bring that down to as low as £1,500.
There's a suggestion here that undertakers don't always allow people to know what all the options are and what all the other prices might be.
Totally wrong. Totally wrong. I've been a funeral director myself for over 30 years now, and we talk to the families, we guide them through. It's not in our interest to sell somebody a funeral or get them to purchase a funeral which is above their means, because at the end of the day, more often than not, we would be the person who actually foots the bill. So that is totally wrong on that side. With the Department of Work and Pensions, they have a cap on what they will actually pay, and if unfortunately you have family members who are working, then they have to foot the bill. The families won't actually be helped out that way. So we guide families through. They know we have a code of practice with the National Association of Funeral Directors, which means we have to be transparent, we have to show the families, itemise the account down so they know. They're spoken to it, and you quite often have families who phone up and they say, they haven't got much money, and you speak through to them. It is not the taboo subject it used to be. We try and work through with the families, and we point them in the right directions as well on there. So
when I introduced the programme, I used the word cartel. I think that was probably regrettable of me to use the word cartel. You were agreeing with somebody else who'd used that word. It's not your word.
It's not my word at all. No, not at all. Though, if you go online and Google, you will find some monks in the United States who genuinely did face a cartel over manufacturing coffins, and actually, yes, indeed, and they managed to get in there in the end. But there is no cartel. I mean, there is actually more competition in North East Lincolnshire in this business than there is in many other areas. You've got...
Why is that? We don't die more often than anybody else, do we?
The 13, is it, I think?
Yes.
13 providers, yes.
Yes, yes, but it is unfortunate that
I was going to say,
but it is unfortunate that one of your colleagues actually used the word or implied that the funeral directors were running a cartel, because we aren't, and people in the position that you're in should not turn around and say things like that and make an accusation if they can't substantiate
I think
it.
Ray's made it clear that he disassociates himself.
He
from that.
does on there, but
May I say that I'm really pleased that this interview gives us a chance to say there needs to be a partnership in North East Lincolnshire of many people, and it may be the churches, it may be the funeral directors, it needs to be everybody trying to actually help people, because one of our targets is to protect the vulnerable. Our two main targets are to grow the economy, so that's good for business, and it's also to protect the vulnerable, and we need to work in partnership to support, as you've said that you are supporting. But the language may have been unfortunate, but the stories keep coming in, and only this morning I've done a lot of preparation and a story came in. Somebody went to one place and looked for a cost of a funeral and it was quoted as 4,700, and they thought it was the family funeral provider that had always provided, and eventually they said, oh no, maybe you meant to go down to that business because there's been some changes, and it was the same provision was offered for £3,000. So, you know, that kind of story comes in. I'd not said that maybe North Lincolnshire or North East, it was one or the other, because obviously this is a widespread issue.
But this is a bit caveat emptor, isn't it? I mean, like anything in a free market, it's up to the buyer of a good or service to examine that market and find the price that they like. If I want to offer a funeral at a very high price, I'm going to go out of business because somebody else is offering it at a lower price. But I'm afraid it's our responsibility to do the shopping, isn't it?
And I think awareness is all, and some people will feel that they can do the shopping when they're in distress, and some people will not. But I mean, I think Jill's statement that people increasingly are looking around and asking questions. The more we debate these issues, macabre as some people would consider them to be, the better, I think.
Well, it's, as Mark Twain said, death and taxes are the only two things that are completely inevitable and predictable.
Exactly.
Why would you object to a council-offered funeral service that could be cheaper?
It depends how the council are going to be running it and providing it. I have to pay my taxes through for my rates and everything through to North East Lincolnshire. We have to set up our own company. So it depends, are they going to be running it, should we say, on the back, which it reads in their details that they're trying to add it on to the services they already provide. So you look at things like that, they're already selling memorials through, so, but they say they're doing that as a not-for-profit, but unfortunately they're selling them the same price I do without setting up another company. So I am concerned on why they think that our prices are too expensive and how much they feel that they can come down to. There's normally about 35 hours of work involved with arranging a funeral, from taking the initial phone call from the family to removing the person, going around talking to the families, all the preparation and everything involved, and then all the vehicles and the our premises and everything.
It does seem like unfair competition, Ray, when you'll be having the same costs and making the same charges, but you won't be paying the same, you won't be charging yourself taxes.
What I need to make clear is that there is no proposal, and I need to make it clear that this area in some ways has led the way in terms of social enterprise and not-for-profit in all sorts of ways. And I think it would be fair to say here that it is now in a public document produced by Churches Against Poverty. I think I've got that right. That Care Plus, the Care Plus group are quoted in that document, and they're a local group who deal with adult social care issues and meet some of the families who find life very difficult. They are free as a social enterprise and not for profit to go and do what they like now. That's not the council. This is an existing social enterprise, and if they want to enter the funeral business, which it says that they're looking at the possibility of doing, then I think that's the possible. That's what's possibly caused the current anxiety.
Would that social enterprise be liable for the same local taxes as a commercial company?
That I cannot answer. I probably should be able to answer it, but I can't.
It's not a quiz, it's all right.
Exactly.
But it does also say in that document that they've been talking through to North East Links on there. So there's it's all come through at the same time. That it was preventing poverty beyond death on there, but that came out in September at the same time that you had your cabinet meeting.
I think preventing poverty before death, which is the
Beyond,
title. You know, you can see the Guardian have written about this. It is the anxiety that people, you know, are storing up debts for the day they die, and that is a real social concern which you would expect any social enterprise to want to address. And in terms of the process to look at under developing differently how the council develops its crematorium and burial service, we're on.
We'll have to stop there, but could we agree that the great thing is to do the research ante-mortem before death? Don't be shy about it, find out what it's going to do, and you would suggest just plan.
Go and see their local funeral director and talk to them
Jill,
about their concerns.
Ray, but thank you both very much for coming on. This hasn't been nearly as gloomy as I thought it was going to be. Please join us again next week for another hot topic.